Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me. I'm Kelly Buckley, your host, and I am so honored today to have Susan I. Wranik. She is a Milwaukee, Wisconsin native, a national speaker, author, linguist, and medical professional who is passionate about clear communication and quality of life. Initially, she was a translator and interpreter for the Italian Ministry of Defense, and she moved then to clinical work as a speech language pathologist. I'm just going to give a brief overview of some of her career highlights, which include a TEDx talk on the power of words, and we're gonna expand on that in our conversation. She's part of communication clubs for people with Parkinson's disease, a speech consultant for multiple communities serving neurodivergent adults. Publishing publications and recordings include Don't Forget to Say Thank You, 20 Thoughts to Guide You Personally and Professionally Through Life, and The Confidence Quotient, which is a recording on women's communication styles. She has a BS and an MS at Georgetown University in Italian and linguistics, and an MA at the George Washington University for speech language pathology. She's had many media appearances, including ABC, CBS, Public Radio, the Smithsonian Institute, and National Geographic. She speaks on various subjects, including aphasia, better brain health, clear communication, dementia, ethics, and eating. So she is currently in private practice in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So, welcome, Susan, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Kelly, thank you so much for your gracious invitation. Delighted to share.
So, Susan, just to begin with, could you just share a little bit, expand on your bio and explain a little bit about your background for our listeners who may not know about your work?
My work in a nutshell is giving voice to other people's voices. That's my mission. That's my goal. I started out early in life. We don't always travel the path that we chart for ourselves. I did major in Italian, didn't know that I'd ever get a job where I'd be able to use that and survive, but I did. And it put me in contact with over 128 countries and almost as many languages. You learned a lot. I was the only female American civilian in an all-male military environment. So you learned a lot about gender early in the game, way back in the game. Learned a lot about military. You learn more about your own culture when you work in someone else's, which I did for 30 years. And then I decided to take it to the next level. I always wanted to get into healthcare. I wasn't quite certain what, where. And then when I was doing my master's in Italian, I took a course in psycholinguistics and came across speech language pathology. And that's where I landed. And now I'm able to hone my skills. It's only good if you speak another language if you can do something else in it. And being in speech language pathology has given me that opportunity to treat people in other languages, other cultures.
That's beautiful. So I'm really intrigued by this work. So can you share a little bit more about the power of words and how you work with your clients to really capitalize on that?
Absolutely. First of all, let me preface it by saying that words count because they condition how we act, how we react, and how we cause others to act and react. Everything in life, everything in life is the result of communication, be it successful or unsuccessful communication. We witness that every day. It's not just the words, but the words are important because they cause other people to feel, and that's what people realize. That's what they remember. And that's what encourages other people to open up and to converse, to start the conversation. As you know, we're living in a very lonely society right now, as our Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy, says, and he invites people to recommit to the power of human connection. And we do that through words, not always through technology. I like the voice. I don't know of anybody who volunteered to be stuck in a technological response service. Press one, press two, press three before your patience wears out. So that's how I got into it. And then I went into speech language pathology. Again, speech language pathology spans the gamut from neonates to I refer to them as older adults and older adults because being Being a senior, I don't like the term. I'm not crazy about geriatric either. And I like adult and older adult. You become a little bit more sensitive when you're wearing the term yourself.
Yes.
And there's a huge need. I mean, you're dealing with people with cognitive shift and helping them to express themselves where verbal expression becomes very much a challenge when they can't find their words. People with Parkinson's who haven't got the volume, and yet we can help them. And it's just so exciting to have people believe in themselves, to have that esteem, to want to go forward. I refer to I always say the three most important words in the English language are I want, I can, and I will. And when you're dealing in healthcare, you have to get people to want. You have to play to that. They're not furniture. You can't just fix them. They have to want to participate. They have to want to be with you. And then you have to guide them and show them how they can and let
Yeah.
them know that you're not selling fried air. You're there, you have some treatments that will work. And then the most beautiful thing is to see these people get pumped out and to be rolling their wheelchairs and saying, "Yes, yes, I can do this." It's so exhilarating. I love
Uh,
my job, can you tell?
I can tell you love your job, and it must be such a journey for them to come into their own power, and despite, some physical limitation that they may have regardless because of some diagnosis, that they can still find a way to communicate clearly and feel really good in their own skin. Because in a chronic illness, like you mentioned Parkinson's, um, it must be such a challenge for them to come to terms with that, and you give them their power back.
Mhm. And one of the first things we do is I say we don't use past tense, ever. So tell me who you are,
Yeah.
and they can say, I'm a retired or I'm a former, but it has to be present. I always say we don't have any was's in this group. It takes them a while, but it's wonderful with the affirmations. And it's true for women, it's true for all of us. A lot of the, what shall I say, the shortcomings in communication come from our own lack of belief, our own self-esteem. We have to take the power. Nobody's gonna give it to you. We have to take that power.
And you just mentioned affirmations, and, I have a list of affirmations that I say every morning, just changing that internal conversation that I am having with myself. And I've used those for a number of years, to kind of reframe that internal conversation, when I was navigating some very difficult times in my life. What can you say about affirmations for people in different circumstances in their lives? What would you say to that?
First and foremost, the most important words that we use are the words we use with ourselves. We have to build ourselves up. We can listen to other people, but it has to come from within that drive. I want, I can, I will. It's not easy. Life isn't easy. Life is about experience, but there's a way to get there. You just have to stick with it. It's like anything else. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Eventually it sticks. And changing the words that we use. I mean, I was just reading an article this morning where they're changing, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's a
Yes.
big discussion going on. They don't wanna call it PTSD anymore. They wanna call it PTSI. Have you heard about that?
No.
Post-traumatic stress injury. It sounds so much better. We used to talk about mental illness. We just had a huge, health expo where the theme was mental wellness is for everyone. It's about mental health. It's not mental illness. It's
Yeah.
mental health, and it pertains to everyone. Just hearing it flipped, turned that way, makes you wanna sit up and listen, makes you wanna pay attention. And especially from other generations, our parents' generations and before them. Oh, if you had any upset, any mental issue, be it bipolar, which they didn't know at the time, whatever it was, you wouldn't get help for it. Are you kidding? You'd lose your job. And now the idea is to understand, to extend a hand, and to help everyone be their best selves. So and words matter.
That's powerful, and just the change of the word from disorder to injury is, I mean, that is impactful.
And it gets better, they haven't approved it yet. They haven't approved it yet. Can you imagine? There's a discussion on this because they don't have evidence. And I'm thinking, "Oh my," We don't have evidence that if a parent caresses a child who's fallen and massages the temple and whispers sweet nothings in the ear, we don't have scientific data that will say that that will calm that child, yet we know that it will.
Right.
Sometimes common sense isn't so common.
No, that's very true. And back to the, mental illness versus mental health, again, that choice of the word is it gives people permission because like you said, and it wasn't really that many years ago where it was kind of taboo to say, I'm struggling. I am
Mhm.
having a hard time. I am not okay. And it's that doesn't mean that, the path forward is not a positive one of, recovery, but you were afraid to come forward. I remember even, when I started early in my own grief journey, so that was in 2009, and it was a lot of people were not talking about the power of your words, or it's okay for you to be where you are right now and processing emotions. It was I really had to seek out, and that was, not really that long ago. I really had to seek out groups that were starting to have different conversations about grief, and the use of affirmations and gratitude and things to work through difficult times. The conversation was more about, well, gratitude is just, when everything's going well. Well, the real power in words of gratitude is when things are maybe a bit of a struggle from day to day. That's when the gratitude really kicks in and helps you reframe your mindset and how you look at your current situation. So that brings us to don't forget to say thank you. I really want to hear more about this because you have a publication. Don't forget to say thank you. 20 thoughts to guide you personally and professionally through life. So please tell us more about that because I'm all about the gratitude.
That was this book is a catharsis. It's dedicated to my mother. She died when she was 64 years old. I'm an only child, and I was thinking, she's my best friend. Now, who am I going to talk to? And I started writing down everything I could remember, everything she ever told me. And I didn't get them all, but I got 20. And I told the stories for each one. There's a vignette of how I learned that lesson. In the first chapter one, page one is tell the truth. It's just easier. And I told about the silent treatment, how I violated that. But I have to tell you one of the most important stories, which speaks to the power of words. My mother was a professional ballet dancer. She was headlining at the age of 15. When I was born, my upper body was paralyzed. So she was a difficult delivery. And so she was very concerned about getting me to have bilateral movement. So she put me in dance classes right away. I was shy, I was timid, I was awkward, I was awful. And she came to the first recital at the conservatory where she was a star. And here she is watching her progeny denigrate the family name. I wasn't bad. I gave new definition to horrific. Okay. But she sat there, bless her heart, for every 60 minutes, each one of those minutes as only a parent could. And at the very end, as we walked out, I looked up at her and I said, so how was it, it being my dancing? And she looked down at me, her eyes twinkling, cover girl smile, never missed a beat. She said, Susan, your potential for improvement is infinite.
Oh,
Think about the words. Think about what parents say to children, the things that we could say, instead of denigrating them and trying to challenge them by telling them how awful they are and how much better everyone else is. Instead, she came back with that, and I've never forgotten it. It's become my byline.
oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And
So
just
that's what this book is about. It's words of encouragement. It's nothing that most of us haven't ever heard before, but we need reminders sometimes.
mm. And these are all based on things that you learned from your mother, which makes it even more special. What's another one? What if you can just expand?
There is always a nice way to get your point across. Your job is to find it.
Ugh,
And, as RBG said, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she said, "It's possible to disagree and not be disagreeable." And that's something we need to learn because in this world, we're going after the message. but we're really attacking the messenger. And what
Yes.
we have to do is change our words to encourage other people to talk and to let them know that the phrase now is to be seen, but they're being heard. And to let other people know that they're being heard, and then maybe they'll listen to you. We're not proselytizing. People
No.
are holding steadfast to their beliefs, and that's okay. And we can hold steadfast to ours. But sometimes in just listening to the other person, you're willing to embrace a change, to understand how another person thinks. Doesn't mean you're going to agree. It just means that you're willing to embrace otherness, and that's how we learn and that's how we grow.
Do you think that, as a society that we are moving towards that greater understanding? I mean, we're in a I think, we look around our world today and people are, very divided in their opinions, and, it seems like some people just don't wanna we don't want to listen to each other. Do you think
I
that
think we don't
there's
know how.
Do you think we're learning how? Are we moving towards that? I would hope. I mean, that's what I hope. I try to listen to other people's opinions because I think, my opinion is not the only valid one. And yes, I may not agree with everything that you say, but your opinion is just as important as mine. That's kind of my view of life. And
Mhm.
do you think that other people were coming around to that conclusion?
I think many would like to. I think they don't know how. I think the media is trying to get there by bringing people in from all walks of life, and they find when they have everybody at a table, they're not snipping at each other. They're listening. They're hearing the other person out. They're not fighting. They're not arguing. You're not gonna do it on text, I'm sorry. You gotta do it face to face because there's so much more to communication than the words. It's looking at you can look at a person and instantly we make a decision. That's not bad. That's fight or flight. That's survival skill. And then the rest of that relationship is based on supporting or changing your opinion of that person and getting to know that person. It's how the person looks, what they say, what they do, how everything works together to support or negate or to crack what their message might be. We need to recommit to the power of human connection. And while technology is great, it's not the only thing. I don't live for a robotic society. It's got its place. It can help, but we really have to learn how to be better with each other.
And, I think that goes back you were talking about the Surgeon General and this epidemic of loneliness that we have, even though we are far more connected as a world than we've ever been before. But we have, and then, it also leads into, post-COVID world that we still feel so disconnected and that growing of community, that face-to-face community where we've kinda made it we've distanced ourselves from that for a variety of reasons. We have to find our way back. Um, what would be some words if you were in a conversation with someone who has a different opinion than you? What would be some words that would help find common ground? If you were guiding me to have a conversation with someone that I
Mhm.
disagreed with, what words would you encourage that I use to find common ground with that person?
Start with thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell me more? Help me understand.
Help me
Let them
understand.
know that you're willing to listen. And when the person calms down and they feel that they're not because it's two passionate entity, two passionate people. And when they feel that the other person is favorably disposed to hearing, then they'll dial it down and then they might return the courtesy. Well, tell me why you feel the way you do.
Right.
Invite the other person in. And apropos of your comment about we're so connected, I take exception to that. We're plugged in more than we've ever been before, but we've never been as apart as we are. I mean, think about the older people. Remember when you turned on the television and it turned on and you had vertical or horizontal volume channel, not much. Okay,
Yep.
but we knew what we've got older people now that can't watch television anymore because they can't manipulate three different controls. Remember when the phone rang and you knew where it was, what it was, and you knew what to do with it?
Yep.
We didn't need instructions on how to make a call anymore. We have done a disservice. In doing a service, we've done an inordinate disservice, especially to people from other generations at the most important time in their life when they need to be with other people. And apropos of inviting the conversation beyond, change of opinion, let's talk about some of the people that are having difficulty expressing themselves. People who are having a cognitive shift. They might tell you, I see bugs, I see bugs. Well, maybe they do. You don't argue with them. You validate their concern. You don't say, oh, I see them too. You say, where are those bugs? Are they good bugs or bad bugs? Do you like them? Yes or no. Keep it simple. And do you want to go away? Help me. Let's go away from those bugs. Let's go someplace where you feel safe. People need to learn how to talk to, if you can speak to someone who's experiencing a cognitive shift or a dementia. I say a dementia because there's so many kinds, but
Mm.
they all have certain hallmarks. If you can learn how to speak to somebody experiencing those challenges, you can speak with just about anybody because you have to be a very good listener and you have to watch what people say because they will tell you so much in their actions that they can't get across in their words.
That is so true, and I know, we cared for my husband's father with dementia, and I remember I searched for a couple of months for a remote for the television.
Mhm,
He loved to watch the news, he loved to watch National
mhm,
Geographic shows and the Smithsonian Channel, and he didn't know how to turn on the television, you're absolutely right. We had
mhm,
limited and he, so we tried to work and find tools that would help him still maintain that independence and
mhm.
do things that he loved to do, but the world was not set up to be easy for that. And, so you're absolutely right in what you say, because as a family, that was a huge struggle for us, is trying to find a way, to make him feel whole and make sure
Mhm.
that he knew that he was still whole no matter what was
In
happening
control.
and in
Mhm,
control. And
mhm,
and one of the things that, I always smile when I think about what my husband would say to him is he would say, "I got you, dad." When
mhm,
his dad would be having
mhm,
anxiety, he would just kind of put his hand on his shoulder and say, "I've got you, dad." And, I that worked so well for father and son to have that relationship, and it would really calm him. But "I've got you," just 3 small words to say to someone who's struggling, dementia or not, the power of
mhm.
words, right? The power
The
of
3
words to make
words.
people feel safe.
We do a whole, in the Parkinson's group, we do 3-word phrases. "Please join us. I got you." "We have
Oh,
more."
that's
"Saved for
beautiful.
you." Is that place free? "Saved for you."
Safe for
It's
you.
wonderful. Well, and look at all the tragedy that we have in the world with the shootings. That all starts every one of those, if you go back, every one of those individuals, especially the young people, it started with bullying. How does bullying start? It's
Yeah,
by people putting other people on alert that they don't fit. They're not welcome, they don't belong. It's about the communication and the
it is.
unawareness. They're not sitting at dinner, they're not talking to one another. They're not I did a placard the other day on 10 things to ask your child when they come home from school. Start with, who did you have lunch with?
Mm.
What did you learn today? Was anybody unkind to you? Did you see anybody be unkind to somebody else? What did you do? Encourage this, and adults need to learn this too. I mean, we take it for granted, but it's not as common as it used to be. And think about, I'm thinking in terms of the healthcare world. We have so many people who are non-native English speakers, and speaking multiple languages myself, I know what it is to try to twist your mouth into a form to be understood by the person who speaks that language natively. But when you're dealing with people who are of a certain age, they can't quite understand the cadence. They can't quite understand the nuance. No matter how fluent people are, nuance is the last thing if it ever arrives in the language. And two great examples, when you're dealing with people in rehab, you're dealing with limited time. And so if you have somebody come in and you've worked so hard to get them to I want, I can, I will, and then the direct service provider comes in and says, try to do as much as you can on your own, and then I will help you. Isn't that encouraging? And then that comes in with a different accent and says, do it by yourself. It's just so disheartening. We have to, and how do you train people in that? How do you train people to find the right words? And these are people that desperately need the help. There are frontline workers. And even you talked about grief, and the comment I wanted to make is with regard to words. I just read this recently. Uh, that grief is never anything that we'll get over. We don't get over grief. We learned how to live with it. We learn how to accommodate and make it part and parcel of our life experiences. And again, the affirmation, we learn to find the richness in the loss and
Yeah.
having been made better for what we had instead of lamenting what we no longer do.
Yes, it is a shift in that conversation for sure, with grief, and that the whole basis of this podcast, Broken Beautiful Me, is based on the Japanese art of kintsugi, where they repair porcelain with gold-filled
Mhm,
plaster,
mhm,
and thereby making that broken piece more beautiful and more valuable, which that's part of what I like to teach with the bereaved is that, um, yes, life has changed in a very dramatic way, but that doesn't mean that your life is not beautiful, that you are not beautiful, and more valuable and rich because of your experience. It gives us an opportunity to then extend that same compassion to other people because of what we've been through. But it is definitely how you frame it. In that grief conversation, I have heard phrases like, "Well, it's time for you to get over it now," right?
mhm,
Or,
mhm,
you need to get on with your life.
mhm.
Those words are it can really serve as an assault on someone who's really working hard to move forward, because you don't get over something, just as you said, right? You learn how to carry that with you, in a way that can be either good for your future or not, depending on how you choose what path you choose. Um, but so let's talk a little bit about that.
Let's
With
turn the tables on you. Let me
Okay,
turn the tables on you now, okay?
I love
Those
it.
are
Okay,
those are horrible lines, it's time for you to get over it. Whose watch, whose time schedule are they on? But what if we were talking and I said, "Tell me one thing you wanna celebrate." What did your child bring into the world? What did you learn? Tell me something else. What else makes you better? What else did you learn? And you continue the conversation and say, "How rich did you say thank you?" And
uh-huh,
encourage the positivity. And and so the energy, instead of being negative and draining, becomes one of celebratory of all the
right.
beautiful gifts you were given in the time you were together. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through that. I know many people who have. It is, it's devastating, but nothing is all good or all bad. As my mother would say, that's from the book too. Nothing is all good or all bad, and nothing lasts forever.
That is very true,
Mhm,
and, I always said that for me, Stephen was a gift, and so the work that I do now is my thank you.
mhm.
That is my
That's
thank you,
beautiful.
and one of the other things, just as a bereaved parent, and I wanna get your opinion on this because one of the things that I found as a bereaved parent as we journeyed through, it is very difficult for people to approach a bereaved parent, and
Mhm,
communicate. It's a difficult thing, and I recognize it. I have had, friends who struggled with my relationship with them after I lost Stephen because they did not know how to approach it. And so one of the things that I always say when I meet a fellow bereaved parent is, "Tell me about your son or your daughter. What
mhm,
was their name?" What one thing that I've noticed over the years that when people tell me that they're a bereaved parent, they don't say their child's name. And that's the first thing that I always ask
mhm,
because they are still the parent of that child, right? So I want to get to know this child, not just you. I want to get to know the child so that to recognize that they're not forgotten.
mhm.
Um, what would you say to some people who have friends who've lost a loved one or lost a child, and how to approach them? how can not to be afraid to reach out and have that communication and some words that they could use to make that easier? Because I recognize that it is tough.
In apropos of what you just said, the 3 words, "Say the name." It's so important. And this is true in chronic illness, in bereavement. You have bereavement and chronic illness too.
Yes.
And when people don't know what to do, they do nothing, and that's the biggest issue, especially with Parkinson's disease. Cancer, maybe not so much, but when people can't talk, they're not easily understood. People just don't really know what to say to the other person. What do I say? A lot of times I don't. If I know the person well, I just hug them and I say, you're in my prayers." And I said, "I'm celebrating your angel,"
Yes.
and things like that. It depends upon how well you know the person.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just don't need to say anything at all.
Yes.
Just hug.
And that nonverbal communication
Mhm.
is just as important, right? That feeling of touch that they're not
Absolutely.
alone.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because sometimes words destroy the sanctity of the moment.
Mm, that is powerful and so
Mhm.
true.
Mhm.
Um, what about the written word? I know that a great source of comfort. For me, my son was in college. He was going into his senior year at university when he passed. And one of the most wonderful things, these young boys, hockey players, who didn't really know what to say to me in person, I received the most beautiful letters from them telling me
Mhm.
stories, storytelling.
Stories are
Um,
great.
right? And so
Mhm.
storytelling,
Mhm.
and I remember meeting this one particular boy after I had received his letter and just saying, I can't tell you how incredibly grateful I am. He said, I just couldn't speak to you. So I had to write it down. And it was this 5-page beautiful letter with all these funny, funny stories about
Mhm.
Stephen that
Mhm.
I never knew. And I said,
Uh-huh.
you gave me an opportunity to know my child, a part of him that I never knew. And I'm so incredibly thankful. And so
Mhm.
just the power of that, like to just tell anybody who's listening, if you don't feel strong enough to communicate something like that in words, because maybe you don't know the person, but you know the person who's passed, the power of a written word like that, it's
Mhm.
it's it's
'Cause they can
impactful
read
to
it, they can go back to it.
right, and
They
go back to it
can.
again and again and again, which I did. So the power of the written word is also there.
Mhm. You
I
can
want
lead with the line too. The thing I remember most, I'll never forget, the thing I appreciate most about him, he loved you. I mean, that's wonderful to have somebody come back and say, "Do you know how much he loved you? Do you know
yeah,
how much he talked about you?" Things like that. And your pancakes on Saturday morning, oh, he talked about that all the time, things like that. But
that's so
I
true.
believe in writing. I believe very much in writing because it gives the person an option to refer.
Yes. And not just, writing to share with another person, but what do you think about writing in a journal? Like, if they are working through something like a chronic illness, the power of words to process their own emotions. What do you think about that?
Enormously useful. I do it too. In fact, when I was, going through a bad period in my life, my mother said, "Write it down in a journal. Write down what you're thinking, what you'd like to say." And you never wanna speak when you're angry, when you're upset, but it helps you reason, and it also helps you track your growth. It also helps you see that life is not a straight line. Some days you're up, some days you're down, and that's okay. That's called momentum.
Yes. Yes, it is. Um, I wanna jump into the confidence quotient just a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, can you share your findings on women's communication styles? I'm very intrigued by this.
Okay, this goes back many years ago. In fact, after I recorded the confidence quotient in 2008, I did this for a women's meeting that I was speaking at. Then the they came out with the confidence code a little bit, and that was in 2015. And I kinda smiled. There's an issue about being ahead of the bell curve sometimes. And my thought from women, I was driving one day and I thought the biggest issue between men and women in communication is that women are they don't have the confidence. They seek confidence, and I don't know if this is and now we have to go back and we can't talk about men or women because it's not accurate. It's about the right brain, left brain, and how we're wired. But historically, there was a predominance in women in the confidence. They look to others for self about validation. Whereas, for example, if there were 10 a list of 10 qualities to get a job, and maybe the woman had 8, perfect. 9, not so much. 10, not at all. She wouldn't apply for the job. But if a male, on the other hand, came in and had 4 out of 5, good enough, would go in and wouldn't even think twice about it. And men don't historically, and they've done research in this. I haven't been up to date on that because I've been dealing more with my Parkinson's family, as I refer to them, the family. But even when men are suffering, and this is what makes it so hard for them, in loss as well, because historically we were always men were always taught, boys don't cry, boys don't cry. Well, why don't they cry in our culture? Everybody cries, everybody hurts. That's a sign of empathy. It's a sign of compassion. It's a sign of your emotional intelligence. But in work, it was difficult for men because if they had an issue, they wouldn't talk, and it can lead to a lot of other issues as well. So, does that answer your question? The confidence, and then it's finding the words and phrasing it appropriately. I have a wonderful phrase apropos of leading, and you had mentioned this before when you're talking to people who are on opposite sides of the table. I have a colleague who reminded me of this. She always prefaces with, you may not know this, or no, you may already know this, but this is what I just heard. So it defers to the other person. It's a way of
Yeah.
honoring the other person's knowledge, which greatly exceeds yours, maybe, maybe not, but at least you play to that ego and it invites the listen. It invites the listen, and that's the important part. With regard to women, it's important to own what you're saying. And in the end, there'll always be people we see that on television all the time now. It'll be very interesting to see from a linguistic standpoint. I'm looking forward to seeing the male and the female address this issue in a way that the male probably hasn't encountered a female that's capable of standing up. And I'm anxious to see this from a speaker's standpoint in structuring the argument without going too deeply into the topic of conversation. You know what I'm talking about? Um, it's important to own the word. I don't have to do something. I choose to. I want to. I'm doing. This is what I'm doing this. Do you have to? No, but I want to.
Mhm.
To own what you're going to do. There are lots of others. They don't come to me right at this point, but that's to be confident, to hold your ground. And it's not just in what you say. It's when you walk into a room. Are you upright? Are you shuffling? How do you stand in front of the camera? How do you stand on stage when you come out? You don't have to say anything at all. People can take one look at your stride and they know if you mean business or if you're uncertain. So there's so much that goes into it. And start with the posture. Start with
Absolutely.
the posture. Own it. Say thank you. Thank you for listening. Because
Thank
you
you
intend
for listening.
you want to invite that listen. You want them to. You set the tone. You have to set the tone.
So it's just about kind of opening up that dialogue and giving people, because some people, it depending on who you're speaking to, some people enter into a conversation with a certain mindset of how things will go. So by you using those words, you are then saying, I'm open to your ideas. I'm open to listening to what you have to say. And I'm comfortable enough in my own space to do so. Um, I'm not I'm not putting up any walls because I want to learn from you.
Apropos of that, what you just said, um, when women come out, they don't, and the thought just went out of my mind as you were saying that, the they don't own what they say, and we'll go back to it. I'll come back to it. It just
Okay.
completely went out of my mind.
No
I
worries.
apologize.
Um, so when someone is struggling, it could be someone with a challenging workplace, something that was happening at home. Uh, what would you say to them? Where do I start? Where do I start? How do I find the words to work through a difficulty? What would like how would you guide someone if they are really struggling right now and struggling to communicate what they need?
I'm not a coach. The first thing I would say, though, is deep breath, time out, deep breath, deep breath. Okay, now let's think about everything that's good in your life right now. Let's think about something that's positive. When I talk about dementia, I say that people spend a lot of time lamenting what was and will never be. And then in a moment of clarity, they go forward and they go to the dread. And in the interim, they're missing the present, which is all we have. And it's
Right.
important to grab on for everything that we have right now. I encourage people to take time out to take care of themselves and to be clear. If people say, let me know if I can help, have an answer. Have an answer. Say, "I'd be most grateful. Do you think you could be with him or with her from 9 to 12 on Tuesday?" And set that up, even if it's only for a week, but have a schedule like that. And if that person could come for 3 hours, then you march yourself out and you do something to take care of you, because you can always hire people to take care of other people. You can't hire people to provide the familial love. They may be great caregivers, they may love with all their hearts, but they can't be the spouse, they can't be the parent, they can't be the child. You have to guarantee your own health so that you can continue to give.
And so have you found that that is a struggle for people to ask for help in situations like that? Is that,
They don't yeah, I don't think they don't have formulated an answer because it's kind of like pro forma. "Oh, is there anything I can do to help? Thank you very much. No, not at this time." But we all know that's not true. That's not true at
yeah,
all. And sometimes you can offer services or offer other things, and there you can bring food, you can do all kinds of things that will be appreciated, but people just can't think of it at the time. And as I say, it's incumbent upon those who are in need to indicate the need because people do like to give.
they
There are
do.
people out there who like to monopolize giving, they never wanna receive anything. We all have friends like that, a few friends, right? You can't give them anything. They have to,
Yeah.
they have to be the givers all the time, and they deprive the other person of that opportunity, that joy in giving.
Yes,
And
that's
I
so
I changed the
true.
words too. You asked about words that we use when you're dealing with, and as I say, I don't call it end of life, I refer to it as closing the circle of life, and I'm not circumventing, I'm not talking about reality euphemistically, but people will come to me when they know that the person is, not going to be with them much longer. And they'll
Mhm.
say, for example, a woman said to me, his eyes are closed. He's not talking. It's like he's sleeping all the time. And I said, he's not sleeping. He's packing. And she looked at me and she said, I feel so good. That's such a good thought. He's packing. And we know that people are going through their minds. We know that they're sorting. They're evaluating what their value was as they transition. Um, People talk when people don't eat. This is an important thing towards end of life. And oh, I could write a book on things. They talk about starving. People at end of life never ever starve to death. They cycle down. They move
Yes.
into a higher level, a euphoric level, but people don't realize that. Not to be impertinent, but I say they move into that upper level, kind of like what people paid big bucks for in the 60s and the 70s. It moves them into that you and people laugh. But when they laugh, that's a good thing because it's a release of tension and they're
Yeah.
willing to accept that. And then I say, they're not going to suffer. I said, listen, I can't, a woman said, I can't let my mother die. She's not eating. She can't swallow. She won't eat. And I said, what is it? Is she not swallowing or not eating? There's a difference. She didn't know what it was. And I said, there's a difference between saying, would you like some lime jello? It looks so good. And her going, uh-huh. And her saying, geez, I could go for a Reuben. Those are two different things. I said, watch her. She'll tell you what she wants. She doesn't need a lot of that food right now. And giving people food isn't going to tether them to life any longer.
No.
They will let you know if they need. Very often in the medical field, I hear this all the time. People will say, they've forgotten how to swallow. Please don't say forgotten. It's like indicating that the person has yet another malady. I always say the body is no longer communicating. It's no longer telling them that they're hungry because they don't need to eat. They're moving to a different level. It just,
Mm.
when you say that something's not working, the first impulse is to, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? So
Right. And
you don't wanna invite that guilt, like, "What can I do?" And to the listeners, I say this, we may not do it all right, but we're not doing it all wrong either. We do the
that's
best we
right.
can, and as we learn more, we do more, and we do better. So we have to be kind to ourselves too.
That is so powerful, and you bring kind of you're normalizing the experience for people because you're telling them that this is just a part of that normal
Mhm.
transition. I'm fixated on this comment of their packing. I just think that's so incredibly beautiful. And it just gives you that peaceful feeling of them kinda doing that life review, and they're getting ready for their next chapter. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, such peace with that statement. Um, what has been this is a bit of a different question. What has been the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself from your life work?
How long it took me to get a 5-year plan that my uncle told me about 50 years ago. And now I've got so many 5-year plans. My hope is that I can live long enough to implement them all and leave something behind for the
My
others.
gosh, I'm part of that club too, we're good.
Oh my goodness. You know what the most frightening thing is how much I don't know. And I think, I got this far and I didn't know that. And then you just wonder how much more you don't know. I think that the fear factor and how much more there is to learn.
Yeah.
I guess it's a good thing, but it can be a little unnerving.
I mean, and I think it is a good thing, and I think, and back to what I mentioned, my husband's father, one of the things that I loved about him is even in his advanced stages of dementia, he was still curious,
Mhm.
and that's what I want. I wanna be right to the last day, I wanna stay curious, and yes, I have about 35-year plans as well that I have to check. But we'll get there, but to stay curious in life and to realize that we don't have it all figured out and that there is so much more to learn and that we can learn from each other. And that in order to do that, that we have to connect face to face, word to word. It's that's such a it's a promising kind of vision, isn't it, for the future that we have that opportunity. It's always there for us. We just have to connect with another person through the power of words.
I agree. My mother had another piece of wisdom that I'll share with you. I call it universal exoneration, and this gets us through the day. You'll use this, Kelly. I use it daily. She used to say to me, "Did you make a mistake?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah." And she'd say, "Did you learn from it?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah." And she'd say, "Good. Take your lesson and move on." That's what they call life. That's what you're here for. Nobody was born with all the answers. You're here to make mistakes. They're learning experiences. Take your lesson and move on.
Oh, that's
I'd leave
beautiful.
you with that. My
That is
universal
beautiful.
exoneration.
I am gonna use that. So, just to finish off, I have a global gratitude group that a lot of people that I work with are in. It's called Just One Little Thing, and the concept of one little thing started for our family early in our grief. We knew that things weren't okay at the time. We were very broken and knew we were gonna be okay together, but we had to find a way through, and we decided that we were going to use gratitude in the little things because we couldn't find the big things at that moment in time, things were so tough. So we said, "If we can find just one little thing each day to be thankful for, we're gonna get through." So each day, we would look for our one little things, and they were very simple. One day for me, I was able to go to the mailbox. I was able to walk to my mailbox. I felt strong enough to do that. That was one little thing for me. One little thing for my son was a good day at school where things went as planned, and he felt happy that day. Or my husband at work. So we did that on a daily basis, and that's what I challenge people with in the group. What is one little thing you're thankful for today? So today I have several little things. It's the beauty of a fall sunny
Mhm.
morning in the south with cooler temperatures. Um, but I am so incredibly thankful for getting to know your mother a little bit better on this podcast. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to read the rest of those 20 thoughts because she sounds like a force. I just
Love the
just
floors.
just so beautiful. So thank you for letting me get to know her in this short time. So what is your one little thing for today?
Oh, every day I have a list. So I always, and it's Sunday. I always am grateful for the little aches and pains, the little contrivances, inconveniences that have, because contrast defines, that helps me to remember all the other things that aren't going wrong.
Yes.
So, I,
Contrast defines.
mhm. That'll
Love.
be in my book of 20, contrast defines. But, in those, you can lament things, but, there are so many other things that the fact that you can put one foot in front of the other and go where you want, when you want, because there was a time when I couldn't,
Yeah,
like you going to the mailbox. And
right.
so I'm always grateful for things like that, to be mindful of what I'm able to do when there are other people who can't do that.
Exactly. So, Susan, before we finish, I just want you to let everyone know how they can find you and your work, and learn a little bit more about this, and also about your writings and your TED talks and stuff as well. So, where can we find Susan online?
Okay, just look under Susan, middle initial I, Wranik, Wranik, as in isn't it ironic? Okay, spelled differently. You'll find on my cover page, you'll find an ACA talk, the American Healthcare Association talk. You'll find access to my TED talk. It'll tell you how to get in touch with me if you want a copy of the book. Don't forget to say thank you. I'm the sole source for that. 20 thoughts to guide you personally and professionally through life. And if anybody is interested in attending my program, I'm not sure you're even aware of this, Kelly, but I invite you to. I started a program during the pandemic to keep everyone together, to keep them positive. As we battened down the hatches and figured out what was next, we came into it as a group. We're going to get out of it as a group, as a world force. And the name of the program is Thursdays at 3. That would be 3 Eastern time. If you're interested in participating, yeah, there's no fee, it's an option, it's not an obligation. It's our hour each Thursday to relax, to reflect, and to uh, build relationships, to help us be better, but help one another be better versions of ourselves personally and professionally. So I invite everyone to come. Send me an email if you'd like to be added to the mailing list.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful and so needed. Um,
Thank
Susan,
you.
thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate all the wisdom that you've shared with us today.
Kelly, thank you for the opportunity. And in closing, can I remind everybody that our potential for improvement is infinite?
I
Thanks,
love
Mom.
that. Thank you, Mom. Okay,
Okay.
everyone, thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Bye bye. Thank you.